Welcome to Small to Big with Sagar Khandelwal. Today we have a very inspiring personality with us, Mr. Sunil Deshmukh. Coming from a humble background, he has achieved greater heights in life. He currently leads an organization called as Institute of Management Accountants of America. That's a global organization. For a person coming from a small background to leading a global organization, we will go through his story from his own words and understand how he has achieved this feat in the life. Welcome, Sunil.
Thank you very much, Sagar. My pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. So, we start with our first question today. Coming from a very humble background and learning your education in a vernacular language, in Marathi, and achieving these kind of feat, how has been your journey till date? And could you please share more insights into it?
Yeah, thanks for asking me the interesting question, of course, which is very close to my heart. And as you rightly said, Sagar, I completed all my education up to my graduation, BCom, in Marathi medium. And I must very frankly admit this, I was not able to speak a sentence of English till I complete my graduation. And that was the beginning of my life. But there is always a destiny for everybody predefined. I stood first in the BCom in my entire university. I was the gold medalist in my BCom examination, and that has completely changed my life. Even though in the school I was a very mediocre student, never even getting a first class, but the change in my career started happening as I stood first in the BCom examination. Now, this getting first in the BCom or getting the gold medalist as declared as a gold medalist has changed my life in multiple ways. One thing is that I started believing in myself, and I call it my self trigger, self belief trigger. I realized that I have got a potential to be a better human beings. I can make good career. So it created me a sort of it was my launch pad of aspirations, which is very important. Everyone in the world needs to have some sort of launch pad, and this result of mine in BCom created a launch pad for me. It shifted my identity in the world. As I was always seen as a mediocre student, now suddenly people started looking at me as a intelligent student, and it also created seeds of leadership in my life. So I think it was a fantastic event to happen, and I really appreciate that. Do not get carried away by your background, your medium, your education is only a beginning. And my advice to the young generation is that every small win matters. Celebrate every small win. Look deep into your achievements. Don't only celebrate one day, but look into those achievements in a deeply. Leverage your roots out of the small town and create your own canvas. It's very important, and connect with everything with a purpose. So I would say that's the humble beginning of my life and my career.
That is quite interesting, actually. I'll tell you, coming from a humble background and then leading a 105-year-old organization in the US, and an Indian to lead that organization is really a big achievement. So, I would want to ask you, how has been your journey that way, and what young professionals in India can learn from this journey of yours? Because it is very rare for an Indian to lead a global organization of such kind. So, could you please throw some light on that?
Yeah, thanks. And I think it's the right way to begin the discussion. It will help me also. So I became the global chairman of Institute of Management Accountants of America, which is a USCMA, as we call it, 2 years back. And it's a 105-year-old body, management accounting education, 140,000 members worldwide. And I am the chairman of the global board of directors. It's definitely a very, very unique situation. I'm the first Indian, I'm the first Asian, and you can say I'm the only second non-Westerner in the history of 105
Oh my
years.
God.
So it helped me, but what it gave me in a hindsight, when I think now, it's almost 2 years now. What it gave me is it gave me a global recognition and local relevance. Even though I come from India, of course I lived in multiple countries, but it gave me a global recognition at a very large platform. And I always make this statement very authoritatively, saying that a global career does not start with the passport. A global career starts with your mindset. So if you have a global mindset, you may not need a global passport. Of course, you have to travel, you have to need a global passport. But CMA, Certified Management Accounting Qualification, helped me to become a chairman of IMA. CMA is a globally recognized qualification, also recognized in India. As far as the corporate world is concerned, it's a skill set for the future. And a lot of young students should look at this as a career aspiration because CMA is very well recognized in multinational companies, American companies. So I think it will help them. We provide opportunities for the students at the chapter level. We have a chapter in Pune, we have a chapter in Bombay, we have 10 chapters in India. We have student chapters also. So it is a leadership opportunity for growth, for skill development for the young students.
This is fantastic. Actually, people who are not aware of this kind of an opportunity already available in India. Probably I, being a company secretary myself, it is very new to me also to understand that this kind of an organization is already existing in India, and it will help lots of people right now, because now since you have spoken, it comes from the horse's mouth that this information is being shared now. The next question which I have for you is, since you have spent so much of time outside India and working with so many multinational companies in diverse countries, diverse locations, cultures, how has this shaped your career, and how has this helped you to become a global personality like this?
Yeah, thanks. So I lived in more than 5 countries. I lived abroad 17 years. I returned to India 4 years back, and I was at a stretch living abroad for 15 years. And I have a global career in multinational companies. One of the things what I always learn is that global exposure is not just about travel, it's about transformation. So when you go and work abroad, don't think that it's a high paying job, I will enjoy my life and I will save a lot of money. Yes, that's given. You have to save your money, that's why you go abroad. But it's a perspective over perfection. You will get a global perspective, what happens globally as far as business is concerned, industry is concerned, corporate is concerned. It also gives you an opportunity to become a catalyst of complexity. What happens in India and what happens abroad, there are different complexities. So you as a professional going from India and living abroad, you will learn those complexities very, very quickly. What is very important in a global perspective is, I always say that you need to have empathy. As far as when you're working in the corporate world, empathy is very important. You need to navigate the ambiguities. That's very important. Ambiguity in India and ambiguity abroad, or unfamiliarity of what's happening abroad, it's totally different. So you need to work within discomfort and learn from your discomfort how to overcome. And of course, you should never forget that you are a human being and you have to treat people humanly. My advice to professionals in India is that start local but think global. You have to start local first. Somewhere you have to create that beginning, but think globally, start locally, build beyond borders. I always say that join global professional bodies, organization, which give you opportunity to network with the foreign professional. Seek cross-border mentors. Now, because of the social media, it's so easy for to get the cross-border or international mentors. Look for some international mentors and say yes to international assignments. I have seen many people I coach, I mentor. They said, no, I don't want to get out of the Pune. I don't want to leave India. But unless you travel abroad and work abroad, how do you get the knowledge and complexities and experience? So say yes to international assignments. And of course, be a cultural leader. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's a very famous statement.
Right.
And that you can realize the importance of that when you travel abroad.
I agree.
So thank you very much for asking this question.
Yeah, so we will really touch upon the topic of mentor in the coming questions. But one thing which I have for you is, I have seen you being participating in lots of podcasts. I've listened to those, and I've realized that you're talking about executive loneliness.
Yep.
That is a very unique topic, and not many people are talking about it. Could you please throw some light on that concept which you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a very important question. And I'm really thank you asked me that question, because executive loneliness is the most neglected topic in the Indian corporate world. And why I say that, and I have given an interview to a very famous magazine in America called CFO Brew, and they interviewed me on executive loneliness, which was published in July last year.
Right.
And where I spoke about that psychological distress or executive loneliness. Psychological distress is an equal opportunity victimizer. What does that mean is that a mental issue, anything to do with the mental related issues is equally applicable to a CEO of a company as well as the worker of a company or a mid-level manager of a company. We cannot say that the psychological issues only appear at the lower end of the organization structure and not at the higher end. It never happens like that. Why I spoke about executive loneliness, particularly, we always make a statement, it's always lonely at the top. I was CEO of an organization. I ran multiple organizations, lived in multiple countries. I also personally went through executive loneliness. Of course, I was not exposed beyond a level. Okay. I very quickly learned how to adopt and how to get used to this and overcome that. But I thought many people are not able to do that. So people need to realize that executive loneliness is an issue. There is no stigma in that. And as a CEO, as a CXO, as a CFO, there is no harm in talking about the executive loneliness. Always remember that your strength is not suffering silently. Your strength is seeking support early. If you suffer silently, no one is going to help you. You have to go and seek the help. Some of the signs, how do we come to know about the executive loneliness? I'll just give you some examples, not everything, but a disturbed sleep pattern. Let's say you are sleeping continuously for 7 to 8 hours previously, and now suddenly you get 3 times in between, or your sleep is not for 5 hours, something like that. So disturbed sleeping pattern. Change in food habits. Now, this is one thing people do not realize, that if you are going through some mental trauma or mental issue, your food habits gets changed. So you need to check why your food habits are getting changed. Then you're getting irritable at the home, on the family, or the children, on your driver, or something like that. That's very important. Another very important aspect is withdrawal syndromes. You suddenly stop meeting people. You don't go for dinners in the organization, or in a family there is a gathering. You said, no, I don't want to come for that. So this withdrawal syndrome, loss of interest. You go to office, but you said, I'm tired. I don't want to work today. No, that's loss of interest in doing anything for that matter. And most important is, a lot of senior executives, CXO level people, when they are going through executive loneliness, what they do is they overwork. They sit in the office for 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours, assuming that they will forget that trauma or that issue by doing extra work, but it never stops like that. So executive loneliness is a very, very important topic, highly neglected by Indian corporate world, globally also. We should pay enough attention to that. And thanks for asking this very important question.
I can actually imagine. I'll tell you, I worked in corporate for 10 years. And I've seen people slogging like anything. They have been waiting for hours, 8:30, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the office. And then now I realize probably what is the reason they have been doing that. There is one more topic which really you have spoken about, and I really want you to talk about, is mental health issues. And you have said that vulnerability is a strength rather than a weakness.
Yes.
This is a very unique and different concept, because probably not many people understand. And you have spoken about that people should find someone to speak to so that they can get help. So could you please let us know exactly what do you mean by that?
Yeah, and thanks again. This is again a very interesting topic. We have been taught from childhood that vulnerability is not good. Men should not cry, all those type of things. We should be strong and all those things. But as I grew up in a corporate world and lived abroad in multiple countries and all those things, I personally realized that your vulnerability is not your weakness. Rather, it's wisdom in motion. I call it wisdom in motion because the person who knows his or her vulnerability and who is ready to discuss about the vulnerability, he becomes more aware of himself or herself. The confidence level starts building, and your ability to agree that I am going through a problem, it's a very big achievement in life. And people do not think like that. And how it becomes like, how can you do that? I have given an interview to Marshall Goldsmith Stakeholder Coaching, where I spoke 45 minutes about vulnerability only. My target audience can listen to that. But if you are vulnerable, you have to start talking about your vulnerability. Don't hide your vulnerability. Don't keep it on the closed doors, right? You are going through a problem, you have to talk to someone. Now, who is that someone? That's very important. He or she should be a trusted person, your trusted partner, or someone who you trust. Again, comes back to the mentor, maybe your mentor. So start talking with the trusted person. Then be the first one to share your problem. Do not hesitate that I'm sitting in a group of 10 people. How can I be the first one to tell my problem? Do not hesitate. Start sharing your problem. Be the first one, no problem. And seek a neutral support. Sometime you need to go to a neutral person who is not interested in you too much or who does not know too much about you. So find a neutral person who can guide you and tell you how to manage the vulnerability. And over a period of time, use your voice of vulnerability to help others also. Because there are multiple people going through vulnerability, but people do not want to talk about the vulnerability. Talking vulnerability openly and agreeing that I have a problem does not mean that you are not a good leader. It means you are a good leader. I remember an issue, one of the ISRO satellite was launched in India, and you remember it didn't go in a first attempt. And the ISRO CEO was crying on the shoulders of or
The Prime Minister,
Narendra
yes.
Modi. Now, people, that's vulnerability. You are a human being. You can make mistakes. Accept your mistakes and go ahead. And that's what I talk about vulnerability.
This is very interesting, actually. You putting for this idea where people can actually think that being vulnerable is really not a taboo, and it's actually a strength. And if you speak to people, they can actually find some solace and then perform better. Is a really a interesting topic for people to really look into. And we will talk about your book also in the in the
Yes.
last when we go ahead. There's one thing which I really want to ask you, and this probably would be interesting to my audience as well.
Sure.
Is that professionals really need lots of energy, and they have to juggle between their personal aspirations and then their what do you call that, professional aspirations, and then what do you advise them in terms of how to juggle between these two and also maintain momentum and achieve newer heights in the life?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's more to do with your behavioral aspect of human beings. And we always think that our energy levels go down at a particular time and they go up at a. So one thing is very important in a corporate world. You need to be sustaining your leadership, sustaining your energy levels. And when I talk about energy levels or when I talk about inspiration, I always say that your energy levels depends on not on your intensity, but they depend on your intentionality.
Okay.
So there's a difference. Intensity versus intentionality. How, if you are intentional to do something, if you are convinced to do something, you will find the energy. But intensity is not like that. Other thing, I always believe that managing energy is more important than managing the time. People think if I manage my time, I manage my energy. It's not that way.
Okay.
Managing energy is more important than managing
time. Oh my God.
Time management and energy management are two different things. People should not confuse in that. And third thing is my energy management strategy. You ask me how do I manage my energy and all those things. I'll tell you, I very often revisit the purpose, what I am doing, why am I doing, and am I convinced to do that again and again. So revisit your purpose. Anything. You might be, let's say you want to go to the gym every day. Why are you going to the gym? What's the purpose of going to the gym? Second thing is set clear boundaries. How much work you would like to do. Reflect on how much time you are giving for that work. Know your fuel resources. So how do you like to fuel your car? You also need to fuel your body. That doesn't mean only food. If you need to fuel your mind, your body, you need to know what are your hobbies, what are your liking. For example, when I feel tired or I feel low on my energy, I go and teach in a college or university.
Okay.
That's my energy. I naturally get energy from there. So all of us or the listeners, your energy source is different. But you need to find out that energy source, where it lies, how it lies. It could be just going for a walk in a jungle, or going for a walk in a garden, or maybe reading a nice book, or maybe doing an interesting conversation like what you and me are doing here.
Rightly said.
So energy comes from multiple sources, but we need to find out what is my trigger of energy creator. And I think if someone does that, I think you will definitely increase your energy every day, and you will not have depletion in your energy so quickly.
Okay. So this is very interesting. Actually, what you say is intention is very important than intensity, because I can now really connect it. When you have an intention, you would really not care about the intensity. You would want to achieve it the way you want it, rather than caring about your own energies. There is one question which really comes to me right now when you're talking about this is, at times what happens is that the leaders are so stuck into their roles, and they behave in a pattern probably which they feel it right, but it gives lots of pressure onto the others. So how would you simplify this when when the leaders are so stuck in their roles and cannot maneuver or cannot adapt to things? What would you want to say about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon, and we are all human beings. We get carried away sometimes, maybe many times. So we need to understand your role and your identity are two different things. Let's say I am the global chairman of IMA now. I am not going to remain global chairman of IMA lifelong.
Rightly so.
It's for a given period of time. So my identity as Sunil Deshmukh is first more important than my identity as a global chairman of IMA. But if I do not understand the differentiation, then of course there is a problem, and many people get carried away with that.
Right.
So I always tell my participants, my audience, that you anchor the values of your role and not the vanity.
Okay.
What comes with that role is not important. Values, what values you are bringing into that role, what values you are passing on to your audience. If you are able to do that, you will stay grounded. You will always remember, hey, I am Sunil Deshmukh first, and then I am a CEO or a CFO of an organization. Reflect on regular basis that what are you doing as an individual Sunil, and what are you doing as a role of that company's CEO or CXO. Stay close to the real people who identify you as your friend or as your brother or your husband, and not to the people who will always say you, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. That's another impulse. Then engage in some role-free activities. For example, classic example is go and do some work of giving back to the society. Maybe become a Rotary member. Why not? Right?
Yes.
Or maybe just go and do some mentoring or pro bono coaching. When you go and do that, you are not identified as a role, but you are identified as a human being. That's very, very important. Detach from outcome, focus on intention. Again, I'm coming to the intention. Right? Very important. What is your intention? Your intention is to give back to help the people at large. So do that. And of course, practice humility. Very, very important that humility is very important in our life. Humanity is more important than humility. So follow these practices. I think everything should be under control. Thank you.
Fantastic. So out of many phrases which you have coined, I'll just read. You have said about common sense to an uncommon degree, which you also refer to as sense making. So could you please let us know exactly what do you mean by that, and what importance does it lies?
Yeah, thanks for asking this question, because I have my personal beliefs. I personally believe that I am a product of common sense. I lived in so many countries. Of course, I failed many times, but I succeeded also. Why I succeeded? Because of my super common sense, or we'll come to sense making. Common sense to an uncommon degree is what world calls as a wisdom. So when you say that, oh, someone is talking words of wisdom, it's too much common sense sitting there, experience sitting there, right? And that's why he or she is talking wisdom. But when I talk about common sense and sense making, these are two different things. Common sense, we very oftenly use in our day-to-day discussion, show some common sense or do this and all those things. When I talk sense making, I'm talking about your corporate office, your professional life. And making sense of the things means basically when you are a leader, when you're a CXO, when you're a CFO, or whatever leadership position is there, you need to make continuously sense of what's happening around you. And when I say around you, it does not mean within your organization. It also means outside your organization. Let's take an example of tariff. Tariff today is a big topic of discussion. And let's say you are a leader of an organization. You need to make very quickly sense of what's going to happen because of this tariff on my business, on my country, and change your business model or way of doing the things quickly. Now that is sense making.
Right, yes.
There's a famous American behavioral scientist by name Carl Weick. He developed the theory of sense making. I have written a full-fledged book chapter on this topic in a book which is published by Oxford University professors. I have written a full chapter based on my research. And in that book, I have talked that how my sense-making skills help me to grow in my life. And to be frank, I mean, I should confess this to you, Sagar. When I was doing all these things, I was not knowing about sense-making. I was doing this without knowing there exists something like sense-making. But when I went to Oxford for my leadership program, the Dean of Oxford University professor came and told me, Sunil, you are following a sense-making approach. I asked, what is sense-making approach? Then he gave me the book. You read this book. And that's how it all happened. So sense-making is basically you have to cultivate a habit of making sense, connecting the dots all the time. And when you connect the dots, it is not always easy because you have to make meaning out of those dots. Data is there, but data is not everything. Your gut, your intuition, your external circumstances may change a lot of things. So what do you need to be? You need to be curious. You need to ask a lot of questions. You need to listen to the people, and that will help you to make more sense. But when you make sense making, you need to prepare way out, or you need to prepare your own way of working out. Could be your framework, could be your methodology, and then use that. Once you are successful, you will know how does it work. So this is all about sense making.
Yes. When you were talking right now, you just spoke of constant learning. I think you said that people really have to
Yes.
understand. You have also been talking about this constant learning throughout the life, and then people should really take to that. What would you want to talk
Yeah,
about
so
that? Yeah.
my philosophy about learning, skill development is, I always say that lifelong learning isn't optional. It's not optional. It's your professional oxygen.
Right.
If you want to have your career on a longer term basis to be a successful, you need to do a lifelong learning. You need to keep on learning. And there's a very famous book published by Marshall Goldsmith which says that what got you here won't get you there.
Rightly so.
So which means you have to keep on learning all the time. It also means that you have to create a resilience. You have to create a capability. How do you create that capability and resilience? So capability comes from learning consistently, not occasionally. Our problem is once you get the basic qualification, chartered accountant, company secretary, or engineer, we have said, I'm done now. But that's the only beginning for you, right? So you have to consistently build your capability. And I always say this, you save money and you save your leaves for your self development, for your skill development, for your education. I still do that. I save a portion of my money for my skill enhancement, for my knowledge enhancement. I still do that.
Okay.
And when I was working in corporate world, I used to save my leave balance, your 30 days leave. I will keep 1 week leave to go and study abroad or go out to the university or college. Of course, nowadays you have multiple hybrid options. You can study online. But getting your knowledge enhancement is very, very important. If you want to become, or if you want to remain relevant in the corporate world, you have to learn continuously. Some of the areas which I would say that Indian diaspora or Indian young students or professionals need to learn is critical thinking, decision making, very, very important. Digital fluency in today's world is very important, right? Global communication skills. World is global now. You know that sitting over here, we can talk to anyone online within time. But you need to understand those global communication skills, the mannerism also, right? Emotional intelligence of knowing your emotions and knowing emotions of people around you. But one of the most neglected skill in India, which I personally think need to be addressed to, is storytelling.
Okay.
How do you tell your story to the world at large? If you're a CFO and you're making the presentation of your financial profit and loss account and balance sheet, you have to tell a story out of that.
Right.
You cannot just present the numbers. Correct. You need to create a story out of numbers. So storytelling skill is very, very important, which need to be learned by all of us. Whether you are engineer, you are architect, you are doctor, you are whosoever you are, you need to be able to tell your story nicely so that people can listen to you.
Fantastic. I think what you're saying is right. Considering that lots of people have limitation in terms of leaves in hand, and then how do they utilize those leaves? I've seen people utilizing it just for some reasons which are not very useful, which may not add value to their life. But what you have said is right, that compartmentalizing the leaves such that you actually put in some amount of leaves to enhancing your skill set is definitely a way to go, because now we are in the world of AI. We see lots of limitations or lots of changes which will be happening in the future. I think that is a good way to look at. There is one thing which you spoke earlier, and then I said that we will talk it out in the later part of the podcast, that you have spoken about having a mentor. Right? So having a right mentor at the right time is very important. So could you please throw some light in terms of what do you mean and how it will help people?
Yep. So mentoring is a new terminology as far as India is concerned. And if I remember correctly, Infosys chairman Narayan Murthy, he first used the designation as a mentor a few years back in India. But we should never forget that in our own culture, we have a concept of Guru Shishya Parampara. Right? In India, Guru Shishya Parampara was mentor-mentee concept. But we love following the Western philosophies than our own philosophies. But I must tell you that, Sagar, I owe my entire growth in my life because of my mentors. Because they guided me. I had the right mentors at the right point of time. At every turning point of my life, whenever I had a problem, I went to a mentor. Now, mentoring is nothing but simply, Guru is a little bit than a mentor. Guru is much higher than a mentor. I will not compare those two things. Right. But a mentor helps you, handholds you, and takes you to the next level.
Fantastic. I think that would be a good read, and I would really love to read the English version. We have already gone through the Marathi version, which you have already published, and we got an opportunity to go through it. I'm so happy to for you to be here on my podcast. I know that this is a very important podcast for the professionals because there are many there, and they would really want to understand and know how to reach scales in life and achieve the way you have achieved.